Okay, so welcome to our fourth and final week of this Advent journey of our virtual service with myself, Reverend Julia Baginski, and Reverend Janice Carey. And this fourth week of Advent, the theme is joy. Fourth and final week, we're on to joy.
I love joy. And sometimes when you think of joy,
Wearing my
um,
joyful earrings today.
you are. When you think of joy and you think of some kind of very big expression, such as oh, like the Fourth of July celebration or something, with fireworks. But joy is not that. To me, it's
Right.
not that. Joy is really a sense of wholeness and feeling. It's like she writes on the 24th here, it's like a whisper of knowing, a whisper that it's a space of where we can slow down and savor and appreciate
Mm-hmm.
um, what we have in our life, who
Yeah.
we have in our life, who we are,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
especially.
Yeah, we're jumping right into that. I mean, this is the depth of joy. This is where we're going with all of this each week. And, joy, I love that you said it's not that because what is it? Joy is there's like a distinction, like a lot of people will make joy and happiness kind of the same thing, but it's really not. Like joy, we're talking about something that's connected to our eternal self, something that is
Yes.
in the absolute realm. It's a way of being in which we can experience happiness, but we may
Mhm.
not. And joy is distinct from happiness. So happiness is the part that comes and goes, but joy is the part that's more connected to the peace that lives us.
I like the word enjoy. It's almost like, I know it's spelled with en, but it's like, and it's something that your joy is the way of walking in the world from a sense of appreciation and joy and gratitude, all of
Yeah,
that. A
right.
sense of giving, a sense of completeness and wholeness, you
That's
know,
right. Holiness.
holiness. I guess the
Oh,
holiness, my peace I give you, my joy I give you, so that you may have the fullness of life. The
hmm,
master said. So you can have the fullness of life. Um, and the steps are to walk in faith and allow peace to rise and love, and the culmination of all those brings this sense of joy.
yeah.
You know, Nothing else is needed. Nothing, no thing is needed for this. It's the celebration of that awareness uh, that all of us are divine in our spiritual nature.
Yeah, it's called so that then following the birth story, and how we give birth, AKA, cultivate the awareness, right? Like that's more digging deep into, and all the feelings really do, the feelings do match up to the birth story. It is joyful when a baby is born, and there's a lot of emotions around the birth of a child. It's not just happy. There's messy, there's scared, there's, I don't
Yeah,
know, there's what's now what? Am I prepared to even handle this? I remember feeling that way,
yeah,
so but underneath it all, there's a great joy, right?
yeah,
And that's what's underneath it all. And it's knowing that all of this is happening and it's all good. And we have that deep abiding joy. And all we're doing is we're beholding the Christ in each other
yes,
because we've cultivated the awareness in ourselves.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the awareness is God is not separate from us. God is living us. God is loving through us. And Chloe's joining us right now. So,
Yay.
but Chloe brings a lot of joy. She
Yeah.
should have been at the manger.
Sweet. Yeah. And it's just
Yeah.
and we've said this before, it's that place of, you can really, oh, I know she wrote this in here too a little bit. Um, it's it's being able to see somebody beyond personality and circumstance. Those were the words that she used, right?
Yeah, yeah.
To
And,
look at, yeah, to look at somebody that takes like with no judgment at all, right? Like no judgment and being able to look at somebody beyond personality and circumstance, we behold the Christ. That means you first have realized you are that divine, self-realized, self-actualized, like I know who I am. I'm standing in my I amness so that when I look at you, I see that which is also me.
exactly. And,
And then the other things don't matter.
right. And, a lot of times people say there's no separation. And sometimes for me, that kind of sounds a little cold. What do you mean there's no separation? Yeah, I am that. I am the love that God is. I am the joy that God, I am the wholeness. I am a physical representation of what God is. And how willing am I to allow the qualities that God is to express in the world through me? Because that's my prerogative as this beloved instrument. But God is in me as me and expresses through me,
Yeah.
that energy of God, of love. So yeah, it's not separate from us and never was. There's no God we pray to, which I always like. There's no praying to something. There's a praying from an awareness of our holiness. Thank you, God. It is done. Thank you. And as I keep connected to that the joy is there, the peace is there, the love is there, and the faith is there. And I'm walking through like the illusions, knowing that those are all everything on the horizontal plane is going to change. But my connection, my groundedness, and my attunement to Father, Mother, God is what is brings me the awareness of my completeness,
Yeah. Yeah,
living in
absolutely.
my, yeah,
And that's it's
as Chloe.
it's very healing.
Yeah, healing is
That's
whole.
that's
Yeah,
the ultimate healing. And we say many times in Unity teachings and in our classes that, the primary cause of suffering is believing in separation.
yeah,
It's an
yeah,
erroneous belief. That's the sin, the error is the belief in separation, that you're separate from God.
yes, yes. And that is the difference between saints and sinners. That's it. It's like we're connected and we're all the saints, so to speak, and we fall into sinning when we miss the mark of not being connected to our wholeness, to our sense of wholeness. And we get distracted. And the key too is we can only feel whole and free when we let someone else be
Right.
without needing them to change.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, because everyone is on their own journey and everyone is at a level of a journey that we can't possibly know,
That's right.
you know.
Right.
And I love my
Because we're
children.
seeing it, knowing that we're seeing it through our filters and our lenses, right? That
Right, right,
we're not actually aware of anybody else's experience. You can't be.
right. And this is it, we really see this, the perception changes, every generation, at least my experience with my family, I can only go from there. They see the world in a different way than I did growing up. I mean, there's much less separation for them. There is much more inclusivity, much more acceptance of diversity. I mean, we worked at this, we grow up at a certain level and you learn things and then you unlearn. They are at a level of, everyone's beautiful. At least, I mean, they're
Mhm.
they're really connected to being able to see everyone as human. And, I'm not going
Yeah.
to sit here and say they see the spirit because they're not into that awareness to say those words, but everyone is their friend, is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say,
Yeah.
because of the schools they go to and how they're, and how they are interacting with so many more, with so much more diversity. And I really love that. I
Yeah.
love that. It's the United Nations. My granddaughter's friends are the United Nations. And
Commonality of
yeah,
there,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So,
we're
so even though
we're
I'm
all
not sitting
human.
here and
We're all here. We're all doing this thing. Let's do it together.
exactly, and
Yeah.
they do not have in them the learned biases, and that's why I hold a good vision for our future.
Yeah.
Our
Yeah.
children
And yeah.
are see the world in a different way than us, and they're not afraid of AI.
And they'll have their own challenges and they'll
Yes.
have their own things. And
Uh-huh.
it's like
And that's
it,
not knocking where we were.
no,
That's
it's
not
having
knocking our
compassion. It's
ancestors.
having compassion.
Yeah, yeah. It's living in a world from a sense of joy with whatever reality is before them today. And it's a different reality than what was mine when I was growing up,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know. But what do we do when we're growing up in joy and knowing that God is in us and with us? We transcend whatever level we were born into, and what are we tasked to do to bring heaven on earth? And that's what we really, in a way, are all doing. We're trying to live in such a way to make a world that is better for all. Not
Yeah.
everyone. I don't mean everyone, but most people genuinely are kind and want to love their families. And I remember, my dad used to tell the stories of he flew in World War II, and he was on an international team because he flew a Lancaster over Germany. And he said the team, um, they were from all over. They'd come together. They learned to fly as a group. And he would say, all their blood is red, and that's fine. They all have the same desire to live
Yeah.
in freedom, at this
Right.
point. And
Right.
they worked together through their cultural differences and became a squadron that I've got a picture of that's gorgeous, and we're still doing the same thing. We're transcending our culturally imposed differences, and the joy comes in and bursts through when we say, oh my God, this one's a rose and this one's a tulip and this one's you know,
Yeah.
just a different expression of the same life
Of the
force,
same life. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's the enlightenment, the
Yeah.
awareness. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because all the outer
That
stuff just kind of falls away and you can appreciate all the outer things and
uh-huh.
not feel like, there's anything to change or to fix. And, everything is just, you accept everything as is. As is.
And therein lies the process, right?
Yeah.
Because we're processing. We don't
Yeah.
think of ourselves as processing, but when you put
That's what
veggies
this
in a
thing does.
blender,
This whole prefrontal cortex.
yeah, what you put your
Interpreting, processing. Yeah.
you put your morning smoothie together with your melons and your this and your that, and you push the button and it's going, and you got your yogurt in there, and you end up with a fantastic drink, and it's processed together. We are, the United States of America, we are processing. But we're all we've got some of this and some of this and some of this, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful, yeah.
Well, how many ways can God express? Unlimited.
Unlimited I mean, from the grain of sand I mean, have you ever really looked at how beautiful a ladybug is?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the
Right.
only insect I can go with. But yeah. Or my little Chloe here. She's so gorgeous. A beautiful little creature, you
Yeah.
know, you know, it's God with fur
God
babies.
with yes.
Fur. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But the God the dogs, our dogs and our pets can really teach us unconditional love because they
Yeah.
don't see, they don't see differences. They just
Oh
feel
yeah.
love. They feel the
And
love.
they don't get mad or hold grudges.
Yeah, like really, I think there was a book, I want to be more like my dog.
I want to be more like my dog.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, And I like it what we say here at Reverend Teresa writes, we realize at the deepest level, and that's what we've been talking about,
Yeah.
that we are in God, fully human and fully divine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And that's a big piece of it because it's a both and, right? When we step into the wholeness, when we birth this divine awareness, and that's what helps us
Hmm.
to be able to kind of release that thought that, oh, I can, it's in order to be spiritual, I have to like let go of my humanness. It's not that, it's
Yeah.
infusing your spiritual nature into your humanness. It's really spiritualizing matter, I think what Charles would say, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. And
yeah,
yeah, I remember in some of the old books, they'd say there is no such thing as matter. I mean, I'm going way back in the,
right.
yeah,
Right.
and,
Like
and,
atom
and they're at a
smashing
level.
power.
Yeah. And at a level, that statement's true, but you can't start from that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
start
at
from
least I couldn't start from that. But yeah, I love what you just said. Um, Matter is, we are spiritualizing matter. That's
yeah,
that's what we are doing because matter is spirit. It's
right.
spirit vibrating at a different level or a lower level, whatever words you want to
Yeah.
use. But yeah, it's all spirit. It's all spirit vibrating at different levels. You
Yeah.
know.
And we get to have, we get to come from it's coming from the awareness, right? It's coming from the I amness. When we really are, kind of on that, and sometimes it's a journey of you get to be on like on this precipice each time your consciousness expands, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost
Yeah.
it's a never ending, right? There's no, it's almost like I love, Christmas every year. It's a reminder that we get to expand all the time. There's a constant expansion. The universe is always expanding. We're always on this never ending journey, and our
Yeah.
awareness expands and our soul moves forward in journeys. So I like that, this comes around, but it's also just, stepping into that knowing of who I am, when we have a greater sense of that, then we can stay grounded in that. So if we can stay grounded in joy and have our human experiences of, of happiness or struggle or loss or and all of the things that come with that
Right.
because and then we can really kind of like allow ourselves to have all the feelings that come up and not feel like we have to deny it to stay spiritual because that's not true, right? That going
Right.
through the full spectrum of human emotion is a very important part of our spiritual journey. It's like
Yeah.
the highs and the lows. And that's where we have a direct experience with life. And that's where we really create and express Christ, God, good into the world, where we kind of
Yes.
take control of that because we don't deny or suppress any of it.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
That's beautifully said. So to make this a
Thank you.
practical, this joy, I remember when one of my very first epiphanies of joy, of that realization of that I'm not separate,
Yeah.
often happens, well, this is just my experience, is often happens when I have been kind of knocked out of my head, like either the accident that I had or when I was laid up in a hospital. In other
Yeah.
words, I have to stop, you know, and it's in the stopping that these awarenesses of the unified consciousness, I become aware of it more. But what I realize is I don't have to go through that extreme anymore. I can
Yeah.
tap into it without, I can move out of my head without being knocked out of my head, out
Yeah.
of the stories. And I think sometimes I've heard this saying, it's the foxhole conversion.
Mm,
You know, a lot of times people, soldiers especially, will have a foxhole conversion to realize the utter futility of fighting, because it's a never ending battle until you stop it. I'm sorry, but the
yeah.
fighting inside, the eternal internal struggle won't stop until we stop and
Right.
allow it.
Right. Right.
That's the beginning of joy and the giving birth to this different, giving birth to a deeper identity of who we are. Because I don't even want to say a different identity.
It's
It's the
not
deeper
right,
identity.
right, right. And it's releasing a struggle in the sense of, there's always like the things out there that kind of like hook your attention, hook your ego, this
Yeah,
is what you need to do to get peace. This is what you need to do to get security. This is what you need in order to be spiritual, whatever it is. You'll get to the point
right.
where you're like, oh, wait, this is all very conditional.
Yeah,
This is very temporary. So it's
right.
not actually true. And you can go back into living from you would have essentially you'd have the awareness to shift into your spiritual consciousness. And
Yeah,
it's unifying, but it's also like it's very, living in this like multi-dimensional awareness. Like you have
yeah,
one foot in spirit and one foot out here, that's you have the security of having one foot in spirit that you can do more with your one foot out in the, in
yeah.
the
You're
earth
grounded
plane.
and it's a both and experience. Exactly. Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So it's like, sometimes I've heard people trying to say they're trying to control their ego or they don't want their ego. And the truth is, the ego, get this, is not an entity.
Yeah.
It's not a, the ego is no more than learned patterns.
Yeah.
It's not an entity that controls us. If
Right.
we have the awareness, and a thought comes through, we can say, like Brene Brown says, is it true? Is it really true? You
Yeah.
know, just have the capacity, and this is where joy comes, to develop the capacity to live in a world that is dualistic on the level of physical, but to know that it is also fueled and spirit, it also embraced by the unified consciousness that lives us all, unifying spirit, right? So
Yeah.
we thank you for ego, because the ego is strictly just my cultural conditioning, and another culture would have a different cultural conditioning, but neither one is who we are.
Yeah. And you can kind of soften, right, ego by
Yeah,
just questioning your own beliefs in a way, because
yeah,
I think that's
yeah.
it. Like when you say somebody has a big ego, to me, I just see that as a very rigid belief system.
Yes, yes. And,
And
and a big ego also can be an ego that sees themselves as inferior. You know what I mean?
well,
And a
that's a
big
belief.
ego,
Yeah.
exactly. But
Yeah.
sometimes when I say the word big, when I think of the word somebody has a big ego, you see like a mega, somebody who thinks way too much, thinks so much of themselves and they're going to get their way. But the other
Yeah.
aspect is a person who is very timid and doesn't put themselves
Right.
out
It's
there.
not always like a cockiness. That's not always
Exactly. Yeah,
right. And
yeah,
ego comes up in
mm,
everyone, and yeah,
yeah, yeah. And it
all
is
personalities.
breaking through those glass ceilings. That's the true glass ceiling, isn't it?
You're always in competition with yourself and no one else.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly right. But I like I thought, it's a glass ceiling. Let's shatter it.
Yeah.
It's not even there. It's not even there. We're all of the same source, of our
Yeah.
spiritual source. And in that
That's
there
great.
is joy and there's wholeness. So
That
that
it's
was
it. It's home. That's
we're
it. That's
home.
the thing I've missed. Like that's it to talk
And of
about.
course, and this is when the
Home.
Christ is born. Now let's look at that word. The Christ is born, a new way of seeing things from another light. It's another mindset. Your thoughts and your feelings have come together, given birth to a whole nother way of living in the world, another mindset, which is what Jesus brought, based on love. Jesus, I mean, in my experiences, Jesus definitely brought love into the world. Moses brought the law, and you think of it when we have a young child, they have to learn certain rules, look both ways to cross the street, don't, hold my hand, things like that when you're out and about.
Yeah.
But then they reach a certain age and it's all just based on love, just love. And the
Yeah.
law is meant to help you be alive, right? But love is the fulfillment of not needing a law anymore,
Yeah.
not needing anything. So the Christ, the way I see it,
Mhm.
on Christmas Eve, it's a wholeness of a mindset that's being born in me, from my heart, you know, and it's a way of seeing the world from a mindset that is lighter and based
Lighter.
on love, enlightened. And I don't
Well,
want to
you
call
think
myself enlightened because I'm not, but
I feel like I'm a different person now than I was last year, than I
oh
was
yeah.
I mean, like just the consciousness that's always evolving.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of it, I think when people kind of go through that where it's like how you're saying it's lighter, I mean, think about that because maybe somebody who is, watching this, but it's it's the difference is when you are so fixed in my life needs to look a certain way, right? My kid has to get into this school. I have to, wear this kind of clothes. My husband has to do, we have to do this and this and that. And I have to drive this kind of car. And, my job hours have to, whatever it is, like whatever the thing, and then it'll be okay. And maybe you've like achieved success. Maybe those were your goals and you've achieved success, but maybe it feels like you are white knuckling to maintain it all, right? That's the feeling. That's like no matter what, it's on you feel like everything's on such a fine thread, right?
Yeah.
The softening of that is when you let go of that kind of like anxiety, the white knuckling feeling of it, it's all still there, but like you're not defining yourself by all of those things that maybe at one point were on your checklist, right? That no longer makes or breaks you. You're not going to die if you're not driving that car. You're not going to die if you
Yeah.
don't get this thing. You're not going to die if you get laid off from that job. So it's that's the easiness that comes in because none of it runs you, right? You're like those
Right.
things don't have you, when you're coming from this space of wholeness, you have your things. It's a totally
Right.
different experience. And your roles, right? Your roles too, as whatever
Yeah.
your job, you're a parent.
And then we get to see, my God, that's how I woke up, was through those struggles.
Yeah.
And it took those struggles for me to move through so that I didn't get stuck in them, you
Yeah.
know. Like, because I've always said God is of the living and it's of the presence and the present moment. That's the gift. The present moment. That is our gift and our ability to live present,
Yeah.
in the Christ awareness of our being, or Buddha nature, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
do you remember one of your very first times of really having an epiphany of being one with being spirit, or is that?
Like a silly story, like from
Oh,
my
I love silly
childhood.
stories. Yeah, yeah.
Like from my childhood. I think, this was very just like a very innocent, natural. I would go outside as a kid, especially, and we lived up north in Illinois, and we'd get the winds, Chicago, the Windy City, right? So when we'd have those winds, I would love to go outside. I could be in my pajamas or whatever, and I would stand there and spread my arms out like a bird and just feel the wind. And I felt so connected to
Yeah,
nature. I knew on some level that I was part of this in a bigger way. Like I was getting what I am in God. Not that I was having that conversation with
right,
anyone, but it was the feeling of it. And
right.
now, a lot of times when I'm in deep meditation, when I'm in those states, I have that feeling.
Yeah,
Like I've
yeah,
had this since I was a child. I could
yeah.
go back to, that's the connection.
I love it that you're talking about you'd have the wings, right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of times that's it's a similar type things that I've had
Yeah.
as a child. I kind of knew that I was like this winged, beautiful, this creature that could fly, and I
That
would
was
have
it. The
my
wind
wings.
made me feel like I was a bird flying. That was it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And isn't that's kind of a universal awareness that we are truly that free, you know?
Yeah.
And I used to, I'm talking about being 5 years old, and I or my parents would help me do it, I'm sure, cut out of newspapers, because we used to get newspapers at those times. And I would make wings for me. Then my dad, he'd go and like laminate them. So he didn't have to do it all the time. So I
So
had
cute.
wings to put on because I was so convinced that, I was this being of
Yeah.
light.
Yeah.
And then I was
Right.
going to school, and my
Yeah.
mom said, "You have to leave your wings home, honey. You can pick up your wings when you come home, but I wouldn't take them to school with you."
That's really sweet.
It was sweet because that's the mindset I had. Was I
Yeah.
was like this incredible, I'm sure I thought I was like Tinkerbell or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so then we move into the Christmas day. And what happens once that baby is born in us, that mindset is born in
Yes.
us of our spiritual and human nature, we awaken to our divine identity. Then what happens?
Yeah. You don't need anyone to save you. No one's coming to save you. You
Yeah.
just saved yourself.
Oh my God, what am I thinking? Duh. Yeah, exactly. It's so much
It's
better,
been
isn't
you
it?
all along. It's been you. You're the one.
You're it. You
You
never
are it.
weren't. You're it. You're it, baby. You're it. That's right. And my goodness, that when you're it, that gives you the happiness,
Yeah.
and gives you the full experience of what life brought us, why
Hmm.
we came in the first place, the happiness and the sorrow, the success as well as the failure, the ups and the downs. It's all part of it, but it
Yes.
doesn't have to touch us.
Right.
We walk through it. I think there's a scripture, 10,000 may fall at my right, you know, so many at my left,
There's
but
there's a lot to be said about that, right? And it's like not getting stuck in those moments. And she puts right, I mean, it's beautifully said. The human experience is the fullness of life that includes happiness
right.
and sorrow, success, failure, ups, downs, through all the human conditions. And when you are secure in who you are in your joy and you allow all those things to come and go, to pass without attaching to them, you remain in the flow of your own life in a way that when you get stuck on certain things, right? I think that's when that pulls us, that gets us into the separation, that causes dis-ease. Like it really, that's like you manifest illness, all those things, right? Because you just can't handle this up and down. You can't handle this failure. You can always handle it. You are not, you're here because you're meant for the experience that you are having.
Mhm,
Like you are
mhm.
made to go through what you're going through.
Right,
Um,
right.
and staying centered in Christ's presence, staying centered in your joy and allowing being in the flow. It's an easier way of being. and you
Mhm.
get to experience all of the things about being human, and you get to experience them in a way that nothing is damaging, that everything that happens is for you and shows up in your life so that you come out the other side with a higher and better and bigger vision than you could have possibly ever imagined.
Right, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely. And again, it's about living centered in the process of life, because life is always process.
Mhm.
They're all in the blender of our being.
Yes.
We are having things put in the blender of our being, and we just keep it processing and keep showing up. And we, in the meantime, we cultivate well-being. And I always like that word, well-being,
Hmm.
because to me, well-being is wealth. That's the wealth. That's true wealth.
Yeah.
Well-being is the wealth. And we remember that we have within us all we ever need to walk through uh, the fun house of life with all
Uh,
of its crazy mirrors and, you know, the illusions, as they say. And all I ever mean by illusions, it's not that they're not there, it's just that they're temporary, passing, passing through. All those things are going to change. But what doesn't change is that we're safe
right.
and that we
Yeah.
are love incarnate. We are love
Yeah.
incarnate. Yeah. And we celebrate that Christmas spirit that we have just given birth to within us, Christ. You know, we devote ourselves to nurturing and building and relying more and more and more on our Christ nature, our Buddha nature.
Yeah. And that's a new beginning. That's
Yeah,
always, that's
yeah,
always a new beginning. And I love how Linda Martello would say the practical takeaway for joy is to be like a baby.
happy baby in yoga. There's a happy baby pose.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And what I mean, so what does a baby do? It demands when it's crying. It's hungry. It lets you
Mhm.
know. It doesn't say, "Oh my God, I better not cry." You know, I mean, no.
So we
Um,
pay attention to our needs, our innermost.
Spiritual intuition. I love that. Pay attention to our spiritual intuition. Yes, and insight.
Yeah.
And I like where she says, a baby stares at dazzling objects. When's the last time you've just gazed out upon a beautiful nature scene? Just gaze, you know, soft eyes and just gaze. And we can do that when we walk the street. We can just gaze.
Oh yeah. There was one I don't remember. Oh my gosh, I must have read this like 15 years ago. It was either like maybe Greg Braden or Joe Dispenza or something, but talking about when you see something like a baby would see something for the first time and like be in awe of it.
Yes.
And you can look at anything and be in awe of it, but what we do is we assign, like we group things and we name them. So to put, to say, oh, that's a tree, you kind of cut off when you start labeling the awe of like the real, yeah, the awesomeness of it.
Right.
So
The
it's like,
awesomeness
so
of it.
yeah, so that baby's gaze, that's very true because the baby wouldn't know what to label it. So they wouldn't cut off the awe. And that's the practice is to just to see with the eyes behind the eyes. So you don't let your brain come in and start labeling, say, ah, it's just a tree, that's just a this, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's that.
Yeah. Because it cuts you from the beauty of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And like she says here, a baby puts everything in its mouth. We can practice living in continuous zeal, eagerness, and readiness. We can taste the fullness of life, diving into each experience wholeheartedly, listen intently, embrace compassionately, and speak truthfully. That's wonderful to speak truthfully,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
and we can nurture our spiritual sense of intuition, insight, and inspiration to live from our spiritual senses, insight, intuition, and inspiration. Then it's really the Christ living us, not, it's no longer I, it's the Christ. that's living us.
Yeah.
I love that. I
Love
love
it
that.
too. Yeah. So we'll be like babies this Christmas.
And Christmas just means so much more to us when we're looking at it this way, doesn't it? I mean, because that really becomes our story, you know, and we're able to embrace our fully humanness as well as our fully divineness. It's not
Yeah.
cutting one off for the other. There's no one to save. There's
This
no
is
one to
just
convert.
a, yeah, it's a little
There's
temporary part of the journey, this human part. It's a little
yeah,
temporary piece of the bigger picture.
yeah, yeah. I am very grateful for Unity Principles in my life.
Mhm.
They are, in my estimation, the lifelines
Yeah.
for me. I love all of the relationships that I have based through Unity, such as with you. Um, there is such a specialness when two people gather together of deep spiritual minds that transcends any kind of material
Yeah.
appearances. The love is so palpable. So I truly appreciate this time that we've shared this Advent. And I can't wait to see how many incredibly beautiful, creative and inspiring and what is it? Intuitive insight and inspiration is my journey for 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're already walking that.
Yes, exactly. I'm already there. Yeah.
Yeah.
We could say been there, done that. Here we
No,
go again.
we'll
Now
just
we consciously.
expand and go
Yeah,
deeper.
exactly, exactly, exactly.
That's the cool
Everything
thing. That's the to get on a journey that doesn't end. That's the way to
that
go.
spiral.
So that's the
Mhm.
way to go.
That spiral dynamics is always talking about that because we go around and around, but we're not at the same level because we're understanding it at a different level. We're seeing everything from a
Yeah.
higher perspective, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's never wrong to pick up a wonderful book and read it again, such as Lessons in Truth. It
Yeah.
rocks your boat because you
Yeah.
are
If
at a
that's your
different level.
favorite, I don't know. I have like for this time of year, I love Lessons in Truth, but the one that I go back to a lot is Your Hope of Your Hope of
Hope of
Glory.
glory. Yeah.
Um
Mhm.
Elizabeth
Sam's. Yeah. I
Elizabeth
know.
Sands Turner. Yes.
Right. Right.
It's my favorite unity
Yeah.
book about the Gospels. Yeah.
Yeah.
About Jesus. Yeah.
There's so many. And of course I love to write anything about um Joel Goldsmith because he's such an
Yeah.
incredible mystic. So, you know, when I read these things, you know, it really is resonating with you when you feel it inside. So I love to read words that make me quiver.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's the love that's being triggered. That's in me. Yeah. So
Beautiful.
anyway, Julia, I have really, really appreciated this time with, and this is a lovely tradition that we have started. Um,
I have too. And I want to say Merry Christmas to you and to everyone who's been on the journey with us. And we love you. And
yeah.
all
Yes,
carried on into the new year. It's a beautiful space to be in and to start fresh. And we're all babies in our new awareness and our new consciousness growing together.
right. Yes, I want to say Merry Christmas and I want to say Happy Holidays and I want to say whatever path you are walking for God realization, keep going, keep on it
Yeah.
because there's nothing better than knowing that you are this love incarnate, however you can experience it. Just savor this special, holy time because it's beautiful.
Okay.
Life is beautiful. There's more beauty than not.
Yes, there is.
Beautiful
Thank
people
you.
than, so yeah.
Thank you
So
for that.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. God bless. Godspeed. We'll see you hopefully in the new year
Yes,
at Unity somewhere.
we'll see you at Unity.
Yes, we'll see you at Unity. Take
Merry
care.
Christmas.